Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in England.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers Premier League show. Match day 13 is in the books with today's final game now in. I am your host, Timucin, as always, and Gally is with me this week. Gally, what's happened?
Not too much. Little rainy Monday up here in New England, but it's dreary, it's glum, and well, let's talk about the Premier League.
Yeah, we're going to start with Glum anyway. That's why Bickler, our usual third, is not here this week. He's still probably in shock from Saturday. So we'll go in order as always, kind of look at the games and then do our studs and duds of the week at the very end. Let's get this out of the way. We never hide the fact that we're Liverpool fans doing this Premier League show. And yeah, this was quite miserable, wasn't it? To start the weekend, Nottingham Forest 1, Liverpool 0. Probably a very poor performance, and even Forest is not good at all. And we talked about this before, Gally. Even with that poor performance, Liverpool had a bunch of chances. They just could not finish, and obviously they give up the chance to Forest, who's able to capitalize, and they win a huge 3 points at home.
Big points for Forest, and I guess some credit to them. The supporters showed up. They gave them some life, I guess, in the stadium. I don't want any more excuses about the lunchtime kickoffs. It's kind of ridiculous. Every club has to play them. We just seem to do them worse than most. But they come out. They look lackluster as a whole. Liverpool did. Forest didn't look that much better. I don't know if it was down to tactics, the lineup. Maybe it was too much rotation. As we always say, when you rotate that many players, you can't have any cohesion. And they've already looked poor for weeks on end. So just a really, really dismal performance. And I won't even go into a single specific player to criticize, because I think you could criticize everyone who showed up that day that, who wears red at home. Other than the Forest players.
Other than me. But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if you want to listen to us really rail on Liverpool's performance overall, check out our Monday podcast where me and Gally are going to be talking with a live audience as well. Nothing but Liverpool and nothing but misery and anger, probably. I think in most cases, I would say out of the three of us, I am the least angry, at least, right? Even I am angry about this one because some of the things like this, some of the excuses is just getting old for Liverpool. And yeah, I mean, Forest, you knew this was going to happen in terms of like how they were going to out. And all this game needed was a Liverpool goal to kind of quiet the crowd, take him out of the game, and then I don't care who we put out there. I still feel like the 11 we put out there, despite all the injuries, was a better 11 than the Forest put out there. And it just comes out to execution and performance and kind of focus. This is not the same focus this team showed against City. And I don't care what they say, that these players are almost starting to pick games, it feels like. And that's the part that's disappointing. Maybe they're not necessarily in their head, like saying I'm not going to put in as much this day, but I think it's kind of like showing in their performances overall. Let's go to the other side of Liverpool where they get a rare win against Palace. This was very much needed because they were in like the downslide over here for a while. Fat Frank over there was about to get in trouble again. Yeah, I will never I don't care how standard, I will never like Lampard. So 3-0 win is big for them though. Like I say, it kind of like stops the bleeding at least temporarily. And Crystal Palace continues to be this like mystery flavor team every week, where one week they're going to be really good, next week it's just going to be some team that shows up that has no idea.
Yeah, completely underwhelming performance by Palace. I think at some point people are going to start, we're going to get to Gerrard eventually in this conversation, right? And we're going to get to these other clubs that are making changes and new managers. At some point, someone's going to look at Crystal Palace and say, How is it that Patrick Vieira is getting less points per match than Roy Hodgson was his last year there, and no one's questioning his job? These things happen. Like, we get caught up in the name and a little bit of good football for 2 or 3 matches or a great result or two. And then we just anoint these managers as like turning the corner with these clubs. And I'd ask you, where is Crystal Palace today? They're down near the bottom of the table questioning who they are at all times. And I think that's what we might start to see. I think this league's really, really competitive. And after about 8th place, we thought that every team could finish between 8th and 12th during the preseason. And the truth is, we were only wrong by a little bit. Every team can finish somewhere between 8th and 20th.
Yeah, right. I mean, it feels like, and here's the thing with this whole World Cup shebang going on, we got another 3-4 weeks here, and then it's going to be the World Cup, and it feels like it's going to be a brand new season starting afterwards. A lot of, you look around and you see players getting injured and crying, depressed. We see what happened to Jota, Varane, like you saw how he came off, and it might not be as bad, but it might be. You never know. I mean, so you got to figure this has to be in the back of the minds of players as they play now, knowing, I mean, this is huge for them. I know, as we're always, at least most of us, I would say, would be like club over country. But for players, that is a special occasion to A, represent the team, B, I mean, do it in a World Cup. That's like, the big event. So
it's the pinnacle.
Yeah, it is, exactly, for international football. So it's just, you kind of see that, I think, in some players already. You're going to probably see even more of it in the next couple of weeks over here. So it's going to be a whole new season starting once we come back. It's just going to be almost like chapter 1, chapter 2. It's just a matter of how these teams finish chapter 1 more than anything else. City 3, Brighton 1. I mean, this was not an easy game for City by all means, but then again, no Brighton game really is, despite going through some changes right now. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of these ho-hum things for City. I don't think it was easy, but they're up 2-0 before Trossard scores the goal. Then they get the third, and it's over from there. I just think we're at a point now with City where if they show up mentally ready to play and Pep doesn't get in his own way, they're going to win. Like that's the team. As long as they're healthy and they have De Bruyne, Foden, Haaland, Mahrez, even Grealish, these guys attacking, I think they're going to score enough goals to compete and win. I think where Pep gets in his own problem is in big Champions League matches, or matches like the one we saw at Anfield, where he tries to tinker and outsmart everyone. I think that's the only thing that holds this City side back outside of injuries, because a fit City team, to me, is beating anyone in the world if they're on their game.
I think so. The only thing, when we talk about, we talk about Arsenal in the past few weeks, like what can slow them down and stuff. And we, slightly saw it this week, I guess. But I think for City, the only thing I can see them slowing down or kind of like making them lost, even if it's in a short phase, is an injury to Haaland at this stage. And he does have a history of getting injured and like missing some time. Because I feel like they are really relying on him more and more. And they're looking for him more and more, which, rightfully so, because the dude is a finisher. But I feel like if he's not there, despite all the names you mentioned, I can see them creating but not finishing. And I think that's going to be probably the only thing that can kind of like slow them down. Otherwise, I agree. When they're on their game, they
right
can
now
pick it apart pretty easily. And
yeah, I'd agree. I think Alvarez, I know I've been higher on him than you have in the past. And I think, and he's shown already that he's a completely different player, but he has a whole bottle of tools inside of his belt. He's very talented and skilled on the ball. I think they would just go back to what they do, which is play with a false 9 before they had Haaland. And I know what you're saying. They're contingent upon this, but before you know it, in my opinion, if Haaland went out for like a month or two, I think they would go to playing with Foden as a false 9, and all of a sudden Cancelo would be the best creative fullback again in the league, because he'd be playing inside the pockets to De Bruyne feeding a false 9, and they'd be running behind players. I just think that they have a tactical ability to shift around because they have so many talented players who can play in different parts of the pitch. But I'm with you. Holland is absolutely their focal point. I mean, it almost feels like Pep, for the first time in his life, got a new toy that he's never had. And he's like, I have an out and out goal scorer. I'm just going to use him and gush over him in every chance I can talk about him.
And that's the thing. I mean, why the hell not? I mean, the dude is a beast right now. And I think the only thing I would like to say, yes, they can go back, but that's, will those 2-3 weeks cause them to lose points? And that was one thing I think that made, City kind of like Liverpool, I guess, you can look at it that way. These two teams have kind of like dominated the league. And there is a small recipe if you execute it to perfection. There's a small recipe for being able to slow them down and stop them. I think introducing Holland has kind of like thrown that recipe out the door because everything has kind of changed. Whereas if they go back, you can kind of go through the drawers and maybe pull out that old recipe and be like, let's give this a shot. This worked in like 2 years ago, kind of a deal. And I think that's like the only thing. Otherwise, yeah, they're kind of on a roll. And Brighton, when it was 2-1, they had one chance. Could the game have been different? But you can nitpick points like that in any game, really. And like I say, this wasn't like an easy home game on paper either. I consider Brighton to be like one of like the best teams in the league. I mean, definitely a top 10. And really, if they did not lose silly points, probably a top 16. Next up was actually our match of the week. Despite the scoreline and the lack of goals, it was pretty entertaining. I thought Chelsea won. United ties it up in the last second. I hate to say it, a draw was good news for everybody else, like us Liverpool fans, for example. And so I would take it over the Chelsea win. What did you make of this game? Like, as you watch it, what do you think of these two teams?
Honestly, they look like Jekyll and Hyde teams all match long. At times, they looked like they were actual teams that were in the upper echelon, like type of teams that were on their way to contend for this league. And then at times, they absolutely look like a joke. And you'd think they were like a bottom half team. And I think that's almost like a microcosm of both of their seasons. Now, they both have new managers now that Tuchel is gone. There's a lot of change at Chelsea right now based on formation, players, fitness, and I think he's still trying to figure out what his best side is. We know the issues that United have. Anytime you're playing in a match where you're struggling to get a goal and you have benched a man with 700 plus club goals, there is also that level of pressure on the manager and the players. Don't think that the rest of the players didn't know, like, you make it harder on us going to Stamford Bridge by not bringing Cristiano with us. We may not want to have him on the bus. We may not want to have him in the locker room. We may not want to have him, sulking on the bench next to us. But if you bring him in, we have a better chance of winning. Like, that is
psychologically, do you mean, or?
I think both. I honestly believe that it sets off the players in both ways. I think some people are like, everyone's more confident. I don't think these players give two shits that Cristiano wouldn't sub in. That's showing up your manager. I actually think most of the teammates, I don't think they have the stones to stand up to him. So I think they're looking at it as long as you're going to make us deal with this circus, we might as well benefit from the circus being here. And I think that's why they've all rallied around him. When he scores his goals, they celebrate. They all say the right things to a man. And he's got to be helping some of them in some ways. Train better, be better professionals. I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time. I think you get better through osmosis being around greatness. So I think there's like the plus and the minus. But I think you add pressure to it. So I think you have to give them credit for keeping the game tight, for finding a way late. The Casemiro goal was crazy. I mean, I don't know that he's ever jumped that high in his life as he did to celebrate that goal.
And if Kepa was a little taller, he probably saves that, mind you. But
yeah, it's just one of those odd ones. But I'll say this. I criticize Jorginho a lot. I'm an Italian supporter, as you know, the national team. I'm a big fan of the Italians, and Jorginho killed them, helping them not qualify for this World Cup with his penalty misses. But that Chelsea team is a much, much better side when Jorginho's in it and running in the middle of it. And I think Graham Potter's realized that, and it's actually looked really good. He had a lot to do with everything they had positive going forward. And I just noticed how often he was just in possession and how calm he is on the ball. And I think he was the big difference in that match that gave Chelsea the lead. Obviously, they succumbed late, but it was a good draw for all of us because that would have been a terrible match of the week had Chelsea gotten all 3 points in that one.
Yeah, going back to that whole Ronaldo thing, I do find that, yeah, it's kind of like a brutal situation. I always mess with Trevor in our morning coffee shows because he hates talking about Ronaldo because, kind of like most United fans, he's kind of like sick of the drama, I think is what it is. It's kind of like everybody's a little numb to it. But I'm sure the players, when you say like they don't care that he didn't go in, I would think most of them are not even shocked that he didn't go in because they know what's going on behind the scenes. They're there
Right.
every day. If anything, it's the media or fans or whatever saying like, "What? I did not see that coming." They're like, "Oh yeah, like you guys don't know what's going on behind the scenes." And I think that's kind of like part of the deal. But at the same time, I'm assuming they are seeing this dude at practice. And say what you want about like Ronaldo. I'm not a huge fan of his, but you gotta respect the work ethic because you're not this good for this long at this age if you're not training with full discipline and you don't take your craft seriously. This is not like oh, I just got skills and I'm kind of like milking it. The dude is in like still for his age, tip top shape. He has never been, obviously he's not going to be running around like he's like 21 either, but he's in shape. And, I'm sure they see him in practice nailing goals left and right. And then, when you go to a game and you can't finish, I'm sure in the back of their head, they're like, man, if that landed at Ronaldo's feet, we probably got a goal. But the flip side of that is if Ronaldo's out there, you don't even know if you're getting into those situations because the gameplay and how you play totally changes. So it's not like you can do like a substitute, like, hold on, we got something creating here. Let's get the goal scorer and like a specialty player. And I think that's the dilemma they have. And that's probably the dilemma like Ten Hag had from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that at nauseum, right? Between the Premier League shows, the preview shows about what Ten Hag really wanted to do compared to what he had to do when it came to Ronaldo. And I think his hand has been forced. And if anything, he's coming out, in my opinion, on the other side of it looking great. Because he's saying all the right things, which shows that in a bad situation, he'll figure out how to navigate the media when he has to as a big time manager at a big club. And on the other hand, at the end of the day, he's going to get what he wants, which is a bunch of players without Ronaldo in the club. So he wins all around, in my opinion. He's actually kind of handled this as best you can because he couldn't fight it. He doesn't have enough cachet. And he has a lot of players to look at in that dressing room. And again, to your point, if I'm other than Bruno Fernandes, who we all know hates Cristiano Ronaldo more than anyone, if anyone has a voodoo doll for a broken leg, it's probably Bruno for Cristiano. He was about to become a world-class name that everyone knew, the head and the face of Manchester United, and maybe the head of the Portugal team. And then Ronaldo showed back up on the scene, and now he's like a bench player in the Portugal squad, going to sit on the bench at the World Cup. So a 45-year-old Ronaldo can run around and yell at people while they get knocked out. Yeah, I just think that Ronaldo looks the part of the jerk, and it's easy to blame him. But United needs goals. And I got to imagine there's players there saying, I bet if Cristiano had Rashford's minutes right now, we'd have more points.
And on the flip side, I'm sure like, every time Rashford takes a shot or, every game, that's what, going back to what you were talking about, the pressure they feel is, I'm sure there's that pressure of I got to finish. Otherwise, this is what I'm going to hear about, if Ronaldo got that chance. So I think that's the only thing. Ten Hag has gotten lucky. I mean, I don't know if you consider it luck, but either way, it's lucky that the results have turned out the way they have, especially starting with our game with the benching of, Maguire and Ronaldo and stuff against Liverpool. They get that win and they've gotten a couple of like back-to-back good results. If that backfires, for example, if Liverpool wins again at Old Trafford, that's a whole different ordeal. I think we've kind of like helped the cause along the way, along with a couple of other results they've gotten, because I think he's gotten that credibility to say, okay, this is working. I think if those were not happening, it would go back to being he'll be questioned a lot more. Let's put it that way.
True.
So
good point.
And for Chelsea, I mean, I thought it was a brave move to take Cucurella out because he was all over the place, and it almost looks like he is lost in that equation over there of what they're trying to do. And he was by far the worst player. And I kudos to him for not even waiting till halftime and changing the system and taking Cucurella out, putting Chilwell at like the left, and that kind of like changed this game a lot more, I thought. And kudos to Potter for that, because most managers will probably say, let's make it a halftime and see what happens. So for him to make that change mid-game, I thought was pretty ballsy.
He was so bad the week before.
Yeah, we were talking about
these. So during the Fan Fest, the Chelsea match was the match. Like, we hunkered down in a spot because we wanted to make sure we had like a good spot where we had like something to lean up against and like watch the game and be in like the shade. So we had this spot where we were like, we're not moving from here. So we were watching the Chelsea match at 9:00, and the Chelsea supporters standing around us, like, they were all to a man saying, like, we know the kid has talent. We know there's a player in there. We've seen it in spurts, but he was an absolute train wreck against Villa. I mean, he single-handedly tried to give Villa 2 or 3 goals. But we'll get to Villa. I mean, they were clearly trying to lose back-to-back matches for a reason, but we'll get there.
Next game up is Wolves versus Leicester City. So Wolves already had a problem scoring. Now they have a problem conceding goals too, because they're letting in goals a lot faster than they were earlier. I mean, I was looking earlier at their scores, and they've had some, it was like one, or they would like draw 1-1, win 1-0, 0-0 and stuff. But then things have kind of turned. Obviously, the opposition has been better overall too, but they lose to Crystal Palace last week, and then now to Leicester at home, and that team looks very confused and lost despite, and I think this is what the problem is. You look at the numbers, you would think they should have gotten more goals out of this ordeal, but they just do not. I mean, let me pull up the numbers real quick so I can shots on goal. This is a 4-0 game. If I told for Leicester City, if I told you one team had 21 shots on goal, the other one had 5, I would think 99.9% of the people would be like, the team with the 4 goals must have taken the 21 shots.
Yeah, they're so poor though. I mean, the shots weren't great shots. It's not like Ward stood on his
6
head.
of them are on target.
It's not like Ward was outstanding, right? He made 5 saves. He had a good match. And Crystal Palace, Leicester City, couple clean sheets out of the last 3, played better results, slowly climbing up the table. I think Brendan's going to save himself, and that'll just make everything on the morning show that much better because we'll have more to poke fun at. But this Wolves team, you know what they look like? They look like a side ready to play in the championship. We all talked about how it was Bournemouth and Forest, and then, one other of. It might be Wolves and 2 other of. Because Wolves, to me, look like there's no. How can you find confidence if your answer is a 33-year-old free agent who got released from the Brazilian league? I mean, that was your answer to goals. They literally went to the oldest wolf on the planet in Diego Costa. The man looks like like the pack wolf leader. It's just that's not going to work.
And he definitely looks his age on top of everything as well. I mean, game wise, and because he was a guy that was more based off of like the physicality and stuff like that, and it's not as much there anymore. And it's kind of like an odd ordeal where I don't know if they make use of this January and get somebody who can score, get a couple of people back healthy, but that's their issue. And if they don't, I agree, they're probably going to be one of the leading candidates to go down.
They bought 2 strikers, got Jimenez back, and still have Neto. I mean, they're in trouble. They can't score with what they have. But here's the thing. You fire your manager who had you in every single match. Granted, it was 0-0 and you might concede late, but he had you in every single match. And you fired him because you don't score enough. You name a caretaker manager and you just start leaking goals because you have no defensive stability trying to go forward. And then your answer to that is we're not going to appoint a manager until after the World Cup? Best of luck to you,
Yeah.
Wolves. Championship sounds fun.
Yeah, that's one of the teams looking forward to, like chapter 2. Let's see what happens in chapter 2 that I was talking about earlier. Well, somebody who switched to chapter 2 a lot faster was Villa. They got rid of Gerard. We were thinking at least 2 games, right? He didn't even make the 2 games. I mean, last time we recorded it, we were talking about like him having 2 games. He didn't end up having 2 games, 1 game. And honestly, after watching that game midweek, you're like, well, yeah, obviously, because I mean, it was kind of like hopeless against Fulham, right? And then they come out, and here's the thing: I don't know. Do you think it's deceiving that they just happen to score right away in the first minutes? If they don't get that goal, I don't know if they just start, like rattling them off. They started the game extremely fast. Is it that new manager smell, or in this case, no manager smell? Well, now there's a manager, at least almost official, I think, but in Unai Emery. But what do you make of this whole ordeal?
So the firing was justified. Sorry, Stevie. It's unfortunate, but you didn't do enough to keep the job. The play by the players, I don't chalk it up to they hated the guy, they weren't trying, and then they started trying when he was gone. I don't buy that. I think there's always a little freshness when a caretaker manager, he had one training session, at one full training session with the team on Thursday or Friday before the match. So basically, to me, he told them, go out there and do whatever the hell you guys like. We're going to set up in this type of basic organization, create up front, right? Because that's what it looked like. I mean, Bailly was doing everything he likes to do, Bailey, by basically bombing down the wings and crossing and cutting inside. Ings was just freaking coming off and playing off. Watkins was just making runs into the channel. It just felt like they were playing like an old, like kick it to the corner, cross it to the middle. And like you said, they scored a goal early. They went up by 1. Now Brentford had to come out, and they just kind of picked them off. And I think Brentford was a little uncomfortable. I mean, there were a lot of rumblings before the match that Villa's number 1 managerial candidate was the head coach of Brentford, was Frank. And they thought he might actually be interested because he wouldn't actually distance himself from the job. So I think there was a little bit of unease there. They got lightning in a bottle, and I think it was a perfect storm. But Villa's still in trouble, in my opinion. I think Emery's a very good hire and a great appointment. I think he'll be a success there if they give him time. I think he would have been a success at Arsenal if they'd given him more time. But it'll be interesting because he doesn't speak great English, and we know what the English media does with coaches who don't speak great English.
I think he will do better there. I think he's better suited for teams like that, where big team but not a high expectation team, where he can motivate players and get more out of them. I think he struggles more when he walks into high expectations.
Yep.
And can't deal with the media, and like sometimes like player egos and stuff like that kind of gets too involved with that. I agree with the whole Villa thing, though. I just don't buy that they're like Stevie is gone, let's start trying.
No.
I think it's more about, but you look at like how Ings finished, it's just more about, I think people don't understand that, whenever there's some kind of a drama going on in the team, I mean, yeah, these guys are professionals, but it's going to affect their play. And it might not, it's not going to make him us suddenly, but still, it's going to affect them 5 to 10%. And in the Premier League, the margins are very slim. So that 5 to 10% can really come back and bite you in the ass. So I think that's basically what happened when the clear heads come out. This is why whenever the new coach comes in, the clear heads in the beginning, you get that initial burst, the new manager smell, and then we'll see what happens. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can carry this on, at least to the end of chapter 1. And then Emery will have time to kind of like implement his stuff and make his starting 11, when we come back after the World Cup. Gotta love having the stupid World Cup in winter. Next up, Southampton 1, Arsenal 1. I thought this was one of those games where Arsenal, you saw the difference between City and Arsenal, because Arsenal was up 1 and really City in a game like that, Arsenal had a lot of opportunities to put this game away and make it 2-3, and City would. And when you don't, you leave the home team hanging around, especially a team like Southampton. They can kind of get things going. They got the goal and they kept going at it. They could have really gotten the second one as well. And I think this is why, if anything, Arsenal will struggle down the road to be able to keep up with City.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. This match is kind of a microcosm of where I think Arsenal's season is about to go. Because I think you say along as Thursday to Sunday becomes tougher, where it's not, playing the Prince of Azerbaijan and they have to actually like travel to Italy or travel to Germany and play multiple legs and then play a tough match on Sunday and then get ready again for another Europa League clash on the road on a Thursday. I just think that's going to be too much with the squad they have. And I do think it's in Arsenal's nature to try to win things in Europe because they never have. And I think Arteta is that type of pride manager. I think he has some Klopp in him. I think if Arteta has a chance to win something, he's going to go try to win it. Yeah. So I don't think it's in his nature to not win, which is why I think he would literally go out there and pick up a red card in a Community Shield. Like, he looks like the type of guy who would get a red card in a preseason friendly. That, and I would just like to kick him, so I would get the red card.
And his Lego head is.
He does have a Lego helmet. The only person with a better Lego helmet is the other guy in that part of London, which is Conte, because that thing comes with an insurance policy, I'm pretty sure.
But the thing, at least Conte's hair might be. I don't know if the newer Legos are better, but it moves, like this literally looks like he's putting on like a big helmet, like the old Lego heads that just had like the round base. You would just push it down and click it in there. That's like what it looks like. Maybe he has like a bunch of them in the morning. He just grabs one and puts it on his head. I wish I had one of those. That would really help the cause.
You wouldn't have to wear a hat every night.
Yeah, exactly, right? But hey, what are you gonna do? I can't afford it like Arteta over here. Next game up is your boy. I'm saying your boy because he's American and you're a defender of him. How big of a trouble is he in?
Oh, he's in serious trouble. He's probably got to go. He's probably the next one out, to be honest. Who would have thought? Who would have thought every manager in the Premier League would be fired before Brendan Rodgers? Not me. But I think he's in trouble. I'll say this: the players love him. That doesn't mean you should keep him, right? But the players clearly love him. They talk what a great job he does with tactics. They say how well he has improved them and making them better and more cohesive team. Unfortunately, the supporters are starting to lose their sense of trust in him. And we both know once the supporters go, you're in trouble. It's not easy to pull back a crowd. It's even tougher to pull back a crowd in a city like Leeds. So for a club like Leeds, I think he gets the World Cup. Like, he gets to the World Cup. He has 3 more matches to save his job. If they're still in the relegation zone or at least not showing any forms of improved results or performance on the pitch, unfortunately, I think Jesse goes. And I think if Jesse Marsch goes here, this might be the end of his run in Europe.
That's interesting. I mean, the thing is, if that's the case, he's got, well, God knows what kind of a Liverpool is going to show up on Saturday, but you have Liverpool away at Anfield. You have Bournemouth at home, then you have Spurs away. So it's not like great.
It's not very fair, is it?
And the thing with Leeds is it feels like a bunch of college kids out there. Like, he gives them energy. Like, he's passing around Red Bull in the locker room before the game. And everybody's going out there like, blah, just like running around like crazy. It's just like a ridiculous. Any Leeds game I watch is so freaking hectic. But I think within that, they're so. I mean, Fulham was kind of like picking them apart and really could have scored more goals out of this deal too, because they have so much spaces open in the back. And I think that's over the top energy play almost like loses their head at times where everybody gets out of position within that hectic pace. And then they leave ridiculous spaces behind. So let's see how that pans out. Last 2 games over here. Tottenham 1, Newcastle 2. Newcastle, as I like to call them, Chainsaw FC, is showing more and more that, they are going to be for real. They've gone about the business right. That is a solid team. And also, I think this showed a bit more about Spurs, I think, than it showed about Newcastle, didn't it?
Yeah, Tottenham might be toothless. We won't have to worry about Newcastle being headless. Dum. I mean, to be fair, Tottenham is toothless. I said earlier in the year I thought Tottenham would push to come near the end of the title, right? I think I picked them second in our predictions, which means I'll get first and second wrong this year. But the thing about Tottenham is part of that prediction was I was saying I need them to stay healthy. And that was actually assuming that Kulusevski, with what you see how weakened they are once Kulusevski goes down and then Richarlison gets hurt and you don't have Lucas Moura to lean on. All of a sudden you're looking at it and you're like, we have Harry Kane and an off Heung-min Son. Like, that's not good enough to compete in this league. No matter how resolute a Conte defense can be set up. But I will say it again. I told you that Hugo Lloris would save some amazing games and that he would give up some freaking clunkers that made you question whether he should still be a top-level goalie, let alone the captain and number one of the team favored to win the World Cup. That overall, that play with that Wilson, whatever it was, where he took the LeBron James flop in the middle of the pitch looking for a foul, and Wilson scores that first goal. I mean, it is absolute hot mess garbage.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I agree. I mean, that was just like, dude, what is going on? And I think with Tottenham, the thing is just don't let them counter on you because they have a tough time breaking you down. Just counter on them instead. And, that defense, especially when you're countering them, goes into a lot more trouble than when they're settled in. And I think they want you to come at them and counter with Son and Kane. Kane release Son and then feed off of the leftovers or the track back. But when that doesn't happen, yeah, I think one thing Richarlison, who we both hate with a passion, brought was that toughness and something different when they're attacking. And yeah, with him being gone, that really showed a lot, I think. And like you're saying, Kulusevski's speeds and, creativity on the wing was bringing a lot. I mean, it was something different to go to. They've gone back to like the Spurs of a couple of years ago where, yeah, you're down to those two weapons. And if they're shut down, you are shut down, I think is basically what's happening.
And I mean, while we're talking about, overall American bias, and he might not be American, but the bias was against him because he plied his craft in America. We should give a little credit to little Miggy Almiron for his match winner because that goal was worthy of winning any match. I mean, he took on two defenders, took him down, sat Lloris down, and then just squatted him into the corner. It looked like the finish of a great, great player. And maybe Jack Grealish could watch some videos and maybe not next time grab his Champions League medal or his league medal and start saying, and they said I played like Miggy Almiron. Jack Grealish would be lucky right now if he was playing as well as Miguel Almiron. And
I like Almiron as a player. He looks like that. I get the same sense of, when I used to go play with my brothers, like when I was only like 12, 13 years old and they were like 19, 20 and I would be like running around doing as much as I can and stuff like that. I just get that feeling whenever you watch him. It's just like a little kid playing with the other guys, but he's playing his heart out and he's a skilled dude. Honestly, if he had a bit more muscle, I think he would be a lot more effective as well.
And I wonder if that's kind of what's happening though, Timucin. Maybe we don't realize he has bulked up a little bit because something has changed because he was creating chances, but they weren't opportunities for others to score. They were just chances. Now his creations are turning into goals. He's scoring goals for himself by muscling off defenders. And I wonder if he's figured out a little bit of the physicality and also where he fits in Eddie Howe's system. But I just find it funny. He got criticized forever, right? By all the outside people, the media, other players, the jokes about being an American Paraguayan who can't make it in England. And at the end of the day, he's had 4 different managers. He's basically first name on the team sheet for every single one of them since he got to Newcastle. He started almost every match he's been there. The supporters sing his name every single match because he works harder than everyone else on the pitch, regardless of what's going on. His teammates seem to come to his back when he's criticized, and when he does great things or scores, they seem happier than he is, and he seems like the happiest little kid on the block. So like, it seems like a lot of good goes around a guy who seemed to get a lot of shit thrown at him. So for me, I love when those people succeed in this game. And if that means Jack Grealish looking like more of an asshole, all the more merrier.
Oh, the more merrier, exactly. And I think part of it is he's surrounded by better players. I'm assuming that kind of takes away and also helps him as well get more space, because he does need the extra space, because he can't create the space as well due to, like I say, like the physicality of the game. Last game that was today, Monday, as we record the show here, West Ham 2, Bournemouth 0. Looks like West Ham is starting to figure out, and they're kind of like adding some wins. Let's face it, they played a tough game against Liverpool too, and could have gotten something out of that, but looks like they're finally putting the pieces together and getting some points.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to watch this match today. I actually had to work a full day. I know it's bullshit, but I did. And
Blasphemy.
paid attention, listened to a little bit of it, and then watched the highlights. Seemed to me like kind of a lackluster event. I'll say this from the Bournemouth side. Shame, or I feel for Dominic Solanke to come off on the at the halftime, stroke of halftime injured. Looks like it was either like some type of tendon, maybe even Achilles issue. And if he's out for a long time, that's really a shame, because he was kind of proving himself as being able to score goals here in the Premier League, which I think was always the question about him, was he a striker for the Premier League? And if he's out for them, that's going to be really, really tough for Bournemouth. As far as West Ham goes, they had too much talent to squander around where they were in the table. I think that they're right about where they belong now, right in that spot where everyone else in the league is, between 12 and 8. It's about 22 teams. But I think West Ham will end up in a 10th to 8th place finish, somewhere in there. And I keep putting teams lower and lower in that because I'm trying to figure out where Liverpool's going to finish. And I don't want to put too many teams in the top 8 and find out that Liverpool finishes 9th.
No. We're going to be in there. Let's keep the optimism going. Yeah, I think with West Ham, I think that's one thing they benefited from is, despite the poor results, they had the stability. And you knew they were not going to make a manager change, and that was not even part of the conversation. I think that kind of helps keep the players' minds in the game. Like I was talking about earlier, how about like Villa, all that drama can take 10 to 15% away. I don't think that ever became the issue at West Ham. They were maybe frustrated with not getting results out of their play, but they knew, change of manager or whatever, that was not even part of the equation. It was more about finally getting some results put together. And that concludes match day 13's quick recap over here. And yeah, started with misery early on a Saturday morning. And it was some entertaining games throughout the week. Actually, I thought Leeds Fulham game was especially very entertaining to watch, and a couple of good ones. Chelsea United, our match of the week as well. And there were a lot of studs and duds, but let's pick ours. Who was your stud of the week?
So I'm actually going to give my stud of the week, and it's, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I was going to give my stud of the week to Danny Ings for coming out and scoring goals, but I can't. I can't give a stud of the week to a guy who might have went straight up like Chelsea rat. We can play down tools every other year and get a manager fired. Eden Hazard mastered how to get managers fired. And then he'd win player of the year the next season. So for my stud of the week, I'm going to go with Bickler's buddy, Andreas Pereira.
Which one?
Andreas Pereira. He hates him. I hate him. Former United player, right? Always looked like a guy you'd want to punch in the face, a guy you'd get in a fight at training with. But I got to give him credit. He's gone in there, gotten to do what all players say they want, right? Give me minutes every week and I'll prove to you that there's a player inside this body. And he went for the first time in his career at a high level and got everyday minutes in a position he wanted to play, which was the attacking midfield role. And I think he's second in the Premier League in assists and has 2 goals out of the midfield for a mediocre Fulham team. So 2 assists, should have scored a goal, and really bossed the midfield for Fulham in that very entertaining Leeds match. As you said, they could have scored more goals, and I think Pereira was almost at everything good that they were doing. So my stud of the week will be Pereira because, well, everyone on Aston Villa is a dud.
See, that's interesting you do that because my stud of the week was actually Mitrovic. And I think, you
Fair.
watch that game and any given situation, if we did an American style MVP, which I guess I shouldn't call it American style because over here it becomes more of a popularity thing. But if you pick really a player that is
Tom
key
Brady.
to his team, and I would say like Mitrovic. You take Mitrovic out of that Fulham equation, they're going down in a hurry because despite getting all the attention, he creates stuff and gets goals for one. But the attention he gets and the spaces he creates and his physicality, I'm not a huge fan of him as a dude, but his play, has really elevated what Fulham can do. And I think he creates a lot of that space that your guy Pereira and Bickler's favorite kind of can take advantage of. And I think, you take him out of that equation, I think Fulham would be in real trouble. So they better make sure that dude is healthy and well. Well, you mentioned the dud. Who is your dud of the week?
So believe it or not, my dud of the week, I kind of talked about earlier. And I've kind of taken a victory lap. But I think the dud of the week has to be Lloris. Because Tottenham are supposed to be a side that is contending for the top four. At one point, we wanted to make them like propped up as title contenders. They're leading their group in the Champions League, and they're only going to go as far as their veteran leadership takes them. And they were dominating that match against Newcastle by the run of play up to the point where Lloris made the blunder and they scored the goal. And within 4 minutes after that, they were down 2-0 and you knew the match was over. Yeah. So for me, it's Hugo Lloris, and honestly, they really have to think about who the long-term successor is and find one of these young players. I know they've always said that Levy is enamored with Pickford, and Pickford will probably be the next keeper at Spurs. Like, he's going to go buy like an English keeper. He wants one. Like, couldn't you see that in that big stadium, him looking at the Jumbotron?
Stadium is so big.
Right. And I could see Harry Kane coming over and like hitting him in the head. But it's just something about, turning around to that standing crowd behind him with his little hands. But I do think they have to think about keeper because it's just Lloris. It's consistent now. They're consistent mistakes costing them points. And I think eventually it's going to cost them a big, big match for a club that's been waiting as long as they have to win a trophy. I think you would try to be more consistent between the pipes. So the dud of the week.
My dud of the week, and I always stick up for defensive players, but it has to be Adam Webster of Brighton. Not only, this could be mainly for looking like a dud more than anything else by Haaland. But even before he gets thrown around like a rag doll by Haaland and literally just bounced off. It was like me trying to muscle Haaland. And this dude is like twice my size, Webster is. And apart from that, that ball happens in the first place because somehow he's way behind the line by himself, covering a guy like 10 yards out so that ball can be played through the middle of the field. And then when he does, first of all, he has a head start because he's messing up the line. He goes over there, and that has to be like the worst attempt at shouldering. I know Haaland is a beast. But come on, man, like you just can't fly off of him like that. And initially it looked like that has to be a foul or something, right? Because you can't get shouldered off that bad. This is another man. But he went like a kid and he just flew off. And more like because he ended up looking like a dud, but he is my dud of the week, not really by performance per se, but just within that 30-second spell, I think he earns to be the dud of the week. Would have loved to hear what Bickler had this week, but we will find out from him next week when we meet and we cover match week 14. That is it for us today. For me and Gally, thanks a lot for everybody for listening and watching. Do not forget to like, subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys next week. Take care.